Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. I love watches.
Wee, wee, wee.
All the way home.
Welcome back to The Materialist. I am Mark Bridge, the founder and CEO of At Present, Matchmaker to Extraordinary Jewelry, and I am your host. Today, we have the great joy of sitting down and talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, the wonderful world of watches, timepieces, or, as my guest declared it 6 or 7 years ago, dime pieces.
Yeah.
Brynn Wallner, welcome to The Materialist.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
What is a dime piece?
Okay, good question. So dime piece is a play on words. Timepiece is a watch, as you just so eloquently explained. And a dime piece is slang deriving from the world of hip-hop, black culture. A dime, as we might know, if we live in America and use USD, is 10 cents. So if you call a woman a dime, you're calling her a perfect 10. So she's really hot. And I didn't know dime piece would amount to anything. So I was just like, dime piece, it rhymes with timepiece. I'm talking about women and watches. And then all of a sudden I'm stuck with the name. And it's really hard to explain to Swiss CEOs who aren't using dimes on a daily basis. But here we are.
And this came out of an exploration that you took into this very peculiar world, basically when you got laid off from Sotheby's at the beginning of the pandemic?
Yes, you did your research. Thank
Try
you.
to.
Yeah, at the beginning of the pandemic, literally the day that New York shut down for the pandemic, I was let go from Sotheby's because it was a result of when Patrick Drahi acquired Sotheby's, and bunch of people got let go, myself included. I was on the editorial department, so I wasn't central to the business by any means. I was creating content, and I created some articles for the watches department, which is where I learned about watches. I commissioned out the writing and had to really get intimate with these stories about the GOAT watches, like the Patek Philippe Nautilus, the Audemars Piguet, Royal Oak. I'm learning who Gerald Genta is, like all these like amazing figures in the watch industry. I'm also kind of learning that celebrities are also making watches big, like the Paul Newman Daytona, and how celebrity is so intrinsically in line with a watch's popularity sometimes. And I didn't know that. Like I didn't understand that watch had such a pop culture angle. And I also noticed that in all of the articles that I had commissioned out, women weren't mentioned once. And that's not to the fault of the writer. It's just that women have been always very secondary to the watch narrative. And I Googled women in watches, and nothing inspiring came up for me. And
There was once a watch made for Marie Antoinette, and then some woman swam across the channel, and we haven't paid any attention to this ever since.
You're right. The very first watch that's worn on the wrist was created by Patek Philippe for a countess in the 1800s. So
It's the wristlet? Is that what they called this?
I don't know. But yeah, it was just interesting to me that there weren't that many spaces for women interested in watches. And I was about to turn 30, and I became very aware of the fact that I didn't even aspire to own a watch. Like, it wasn't on my wish list. And that should have been on my wish list. So I was like, there's something going on here, and it's ripe for the shaking up.
And what was on your wish list? What was on your radar for the first 30 years of your life? You grew up in New Jersey.
Yeah.
You
Represent.
came to school, high school in New York.
Yeah.
And then wandered around here after college. Mm-hmm. What was
I moved to LA after college.
Oh, there you go. Okay. What was in your material worldview? What was interesting?
That's a good question. I grew up reading Nylon magazine and Teen Vogue. And so if you're thinking of me at age 15, who's on the cover of Nylon? It's Mary Kate Olsen. And, you know, I'm obsessed with the Olsen twins and Corey Kennedy and like the It Girls. And so fast forward to 29, I'm about to turn 30. I want something from the row.
Seems appropriate.
Yeah, like it's stuck with me. And I feel like I understood that, you know, I want nice shoes, I want a nice bag, but a watch was never on my radar. Yeah. I feel like I haven't graduated to jewelry yet.
We'll get there.
Yeah, like I'm not on the level.
There's so much that I like about your story, but one of the things that's particularly interesting to me is your watch journey started just as mine ended.
Oh.
And so I spent the first 35 years of my life, I don't know how much of this you know,
Yeah.
selling watches and jewelry.
Yes.
And also once upon a time wrote a dissertation on the history of Swiss watchmaking for graduate school.
Which I have to read that.
Yeah, well, next time you have the need to sleep and 65 pages of boring academic text. But I feel like I know the story up until about 2018. Mm-hmm. And then it's like been peripheral in my mind over the last 7 years. And all of a sudden I started paying attention to fashion and jewelry, which became much more relevant to my world. Mm. But it seems like the watch world has changed an enormous amount in the last 7 years. And you have sort of been at the vanguard of that, about expanding the universe for what do these things do?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's all about timing.
Well done.
It's all about timing, because when I got let go from Sotheby's, this is March, and then I went to quarantine with my brother and my mom. My mom was living in Florida at the time, and it was like I was a kid again. I was sharing a bedroom with my brother. We were in this tiny bungalow, and I had time to just really relax, and Sotheby's gave me severance, so I wasn't stressed about money. I had time, and I feel really grateful. I had this time to pause, and I was about to turn 30, like I said, in May, so it was like the height of quarantine, and my dad asked me what I wanted for my birthday, and I was like, what if I get a watch? Because at that point, it was in my head. And he was like, okay, but what watch do you want? And I was like, I don't know. And I had no idea what my taste was. I had no inspo. So I was like, maybe I should just start an Instagram account chronicling women wearing watches. And that came
to help you decide?
Yeah, it was almost like personal research. And so
this is like people's Pinterest board
for
their
basically,
kitchen.
There's like fashion spotting, all these Instagram accounts. And I was like, well, maybe I'll do that for watches. And it's like, here's Bella Hadid wearing a Cartier Panther, and here's what Princess Diana wore back in the day, and here's Rihanna looking sick in a Nautilus. And just more and more seeing women wearing watches and wearing it with their style. I was like, okay, that's cool. And I gained a little bit of a following, but simultaneously, this is the pandemic. And rich people are like, what do we spend our money on? We're not traveling. We're not like going on our yacht or whatever. And I'm sure the art market's exploding, real estate's exploding, watches are exploding. So
it's a good time for earrings too, bizarrely.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Specifically earrings.
Uh-huh. We launched that summer. Totally. Right? You weren't wearing pants, but you were wearing earrings.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's so crazy how everything's just like butterfly effect. People were spending money on watches. So when the auction season came around, I guess this was in fall of 2020, and it was all virtual, or maybe it was 2021. Maybe they took a beat, but there were just records being broken at auction. Like they'd never seen these numbers before, and all these watches, and all of a sudden, like, the Nautilus is making headlines in mainstream news outlets. And it's like, this is a watch, the 5711 just got discontinued. This is a watch that retails for $35,000, and now it's selling for $235,000 on the secondary market.
I bought one for my 30th birthday, and nobody wanted it.
Stop.
Yeah. And
Mark, you're killing me.
Sorry. It's the last good purchase I ever made. I went to a Patek collector event, and one of the guys there who had bought a whole bunch of things looks at it and sort of sniffs. He's like, nice starter watch. And, then 5 years later, I'm just sort of cackling to myself over all the junk that he bought. And
yeah, do you still have it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think I'll wear it tonight.
Hodl.
Exactly. For those who don't know this history, as we've just gone super nerdy onto what has happened on this.
I'm like, reference numbers?
Exactly. This is, I think it was described in one article as the men's Birkin. This is the holy grail of people collecting these obsessive things. And you're saying this is basically a steel watch that went up in value tenfold over the course of a very short period of time. Because why?
I guess people are just pumping the market. I don't know. That's a good question. Why? Like, why do we hone in on the Nautilus, the Daytona, the Royal Oak, all those references, whatever they were, that were exploding particularly? Why do you think? I mean, as a former watch dealer.
I'm always curious that there are some things that everybody coalesces on as the desirable items. And I always thought that it was interesting that in watches, there's a short list of things that everybody wanted that were in very short supply. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, my time in the watch world was before wait list for everything.
Yeah.
But, like, there was always a wait list for a steel Daytona.
Yeah.
And everybody wanted that. But, like, that was the exception.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you walked in and you bought a watch.
At a Rolex boutique?
Sure. You know, you want a Submariner? Okay. Do you want it with a date? Do you want it without a date? Do you want a Sea Dweller? You know, we got this one. We have it in steel and gold.
I can't
we have
even
it
conceive of this.
This is, you know, I started selling Rolexes when I was 14 years old. And
AD?
Yeah.
So for the listeners, not to interrupt.
To continue to
if you
footnote
walk
here.
into, because my friend Kareem, host of Subway Takes,
who's fabulous.
You should get him on the pod.
That would be awesome.
He has interesting watch tastes. Anyway.
Interesting sounds like a euphemism. We'll come back to that.
Yeah. He was like, hey, I'm, doing well. I have a kid. Subway Takes is taking off. I really want to buy a watch. And he pulled up a listing on Rolex.com. And it's a 36 millimeter Rolex Oyster Perpetual with a colored dial, like one of those lacquer dials. And he's like, but it doesn't have a add to cart button.
Where's the buy button?
He's like, I'm ready to spend the $6,000 or whatever it is.
Like, oh, you're so cute.
And I'm like, oh, what? And it really, like, can you explain too, like, why can't people buy these watches at retail? Well,
and this is where I think your visibility into this was greater than mine, because this was like just before this happened, I like checked out of the watch business. So I will attempt to articulate, but you can jump in here where I'm not fully understanding it. The demand went way up, and it is harder to scale production in this business than it is to scale demand. And for whatever reason, and I think you probably have a better idea of the demand side of it than I do, more people decided they wanted particularly specific items. And the manufacturers either didn't have the capacity to increase that production or decided for whatever reason that they didn't want to.
Yeah.
And my sense is that's a little bit of a sticky subject among kind of the watch people was, how much of this was intentional and how much of it was really like, we just can't increase our production by 50%. But supply and demand being what it is, all right, you can't increase the supply very much, demand goes up. All right, so the line changes.
Yeah.
In an ordinary market, what happens? You raise the price till you get an equalizing of supply and demand. The watch folks said, we don't really want to raise it that much.
Yeah.
And so what do you do when demand is greater than supply at a given price? You have to allocate it on the basis of something other than price.
Yeah.
And so you had all of these other things that were happening, wait lists. And so, Kareem, the reason you can't get a watch is because the actual market price for that watch is higher than $6,500.
Yeah.
So you actually can go buy that today.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is on,
only
secondary.
like $10,000.
Yeah, right. I don't know. Something like that. So you had this whole shadow market. And then I think the speculators got excited when they see that things go up.
Yep.
And so then they chase it. And then the price goes up more. And it was along the lines of crypto running up and all of these speculative asset classes, art, and I don't know what all the things that, like, there was a report once that called them investments of passion, which basically means like expensive consumables for rich people.
Yeah.
We need
that
to
you're
put this
really
in
passionate about.
Right. Lots of people had a lot of money, and I think your point is exactly right, didn't have places to spend it.
Yeah.
And I think that was totally supercharged by the pandemic and all the fiscal stimulus and whatever. My sense is that is evening out a little bit more now. But I think it changed the dynamic of how people talked about these things. And the history of watches, and particularly these mechanical watches or the fancy watches, if it's not strictly mechanical, was these were very sophisticated items for sophisticated rich people. And I think that was primarily sophisticated men.
Yeah.
And if you look back at who the advertising was talking to, are you a fancy aristocratic European, or do you want a lifestyle that looks like one? Then send $2,557 to Post Office Box 27, Geneva, Switzerland.
Yeah.
But that changed.
And advertising at the time, if it was a woman's watch in general, it was marketed as something that a man would buy for the woman as a gift. There was very little agency there. But yeah, it changed. I think maybe as women started, the pay gap is still gapping, but women needing to be in a position where they needed to tell the time. And people just started wearing watches more, which is, of course, thanks in part to the quartz crisis or the quartz revolution, depending on where you're standing, the advent of the mainstreamification of the quartz battery.
The renaissance of the Swiss watch industry, as I believe a very talented scholar wrote in a dissertation 21 years ago.
I know. I bet you could just walk around the block talking about the quartz crisis for hours. Yeah.
And you'd be gone after 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh my God, this guy.
You can be done with this now.
Yeah. Basically, I'm mansplaining to the listeners what the quartz crisis is. Watches prior to the 70s, the 80s were running on mechanical movements, whether that be automatic or manual wound, and they're really intricate and they require a lot of craftsmanship to be made. There are these tiny little machines that are inside of your watch. And then Patek Philippe, I think, was the first quartz. They made the first quartz battery run.
Yeah, it's called the Beta 21, I think.
Okay, I love this. You're
really
out nerding me. No, right. But that was in a big thing, right? And then Seiko, weren't they the first ones to put a quartz battery in a wristwatch?
They were certainly the first ones to commercialize it.
Yeah. Yeah. So all of a sudden...
Astralon?
Yeah. And that was actually kind of expensive, wasn't it?
They were really expensive. Yeah. They were more expensive than mechanical watches to begin with.
Yeah. But then ultimately... the result of a quartz battery working in a watch instead of mechanical movement was that it was more efficient and it was cheaper to make. So then more people were wearing watches, and it wasn't just for the aristocrats. It was also Swatch and Timex and then Cartier. This watch is a quartz watch. It's not a mechanical movement. So I think more women were getting into watches because they could afford it, because they needed to be in control of their time. The advertising shifted a little bit because we were getting into the 90s and the 80s and feminism and yeah.
So let's fast forward back to mid 2020.
Okay.
You're hanging out with mom and bro in Florida.
Yep.
You're building your Instagram dream list. Mm-hmm. What's going up on the board?
I mean, it's the Olsen twins, it's Rihanna, it's, a Spice Girl, a scary Spice. She was wearing a 26 millimeter Rolex Prezi. And just all these people that I admire then and now. And having the wool lifted over my eyes where I'm like, oh, women wear watches. But just nobody really talks about it in a way that was resonating with me. Because, of course, there have been female journalists and there are so many women in the industry that I'm in awe of their work. They've been in it for decades. But I feel like just for me as a total novice getting into it, there wasn't that entry point. And I think celebrity is a really kind of easy way to entice people, to make it relatable, to also help determine your own taste. You're like, oh, I see that Hailey Bieber's wearing that watch and I understand her style a little bit. So now I understand the watch a little bit more because I have the context. And that's what I was really looking for. It was just more context.
And so you pick a Tank Francais.
Yeah, my first watch.
And am I right that you went in to buy this and you went and did it with a magazine journalist?
Yeah. Yeah. So when I started Dimepiece, I didn't have a watch. And people started DMing me what's on your wrist? And I'm like, literally nothing. And I was
bead bracelet.
Yeah. And I was like, should I fake it? Should I lie and be like, oh, I have have a watch, I just never wear it. And I was like, you know what? This is part of my story. I don't have a watch, and that's the whole point of me starting this. And it took me a whole year to figure out what watch I wanted. And this was the result of me trying on friends' watches and looking at celebrities and reading about them. And I saw Princess Diana had a gold version. I'm like, if it's good enough for Lady Di.
Right.
So I landed on the steel Cartier Tank Francaise, the small version. It's affordable relative. It was like $3,200, which is more money I've spent on anything in my life besides rent. But I was like, this is an investment. This is to celebrate Dimepiece. Because at that point, it was about a year old, maybe less. And I went with my friend Liana Satinstein, who you might know. Mm-mm. You should get her on the pod, too.
Okay.
I'm just
making a list here. Thank you. This is you're the research department for the Materialist. Thank you.
I'm the casting director. Yeah, so we went into Cartier because also another plus for me was I didn't want to start with vintage or pre-owned. I wanted to buy new. I wanted to get the whole experience, the pomp and circumstance. I wanted to go to the Cartier boutique on Fifth Avenue. I wanted to feel like a princess because it was also to celebrate my 31st birthday. And they gave me little macarons and, branded water bottles. And they were really nice. And I got the red box and I left just feeling so happy. Yeah.
And was the dream similar, or was the reality, did it meet the dream?
Yeah, it did. And I think that it's funny, like thinking about, I like that your podcast is called The Materialist, because materialism has kind of a negative sheen to it. And sometimes I wonder, I have these existential moments where I'm like, I'm talking about luxury watches. What am I doing? I should be like volunteering.
It's not like the rest of the world is burning, Brynn. I'm not sure why you're so concerned about this. Everything is fine.
It's all fine. It's the dog in the burning house meme. But then I'm like...
People on the internet don't know you're a dog.
Well, here I am. Yeah, when I got this watch, it wasn't just the watch. It was what I projected onto it. It was the success of Dimepiece, a year into it. It was also my 31st birthday. It was a gift to myself that I paid for with my own money. And so when I put it on, I was like, wow, like this represents so much to me. And so it's symbolic, and that's ultimately the power. And I think watches in particular, and jewelry too, you just put so much onto them. And so I feel good about it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that very much is the foundational impulse of the podcast is everybody has an opinion about materialism. Very strong, very negative, but it means something.
Yeah.
And so when people react to something that strongly, it seems to me that there's something there. Mm-hmm. And that was sort of the impetus of like, why do we do this? Why are we drawn to it? Or why are we repelled from it?
Yeah.
Why do people feel the need to scream at the top of their lungs about how stupid you are for wanting this?
Yeah.
The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference.
Yeah.
And people are never indifferent to something material.
Yeah, it's true. You must have some very interesting conversations.
I like it.
Yeah.
So you get your Cartier, mm-hmm. You start wearing your watch now as the proprietress of Dimepiece. Mm-hmm. What do you start building, or what do you continue building?
Yeah, so I think I had maybe just started the website, dimepiece.co, because dimepiece.com is being sold for like $20,000. If any VC people want to buy that for me.
Your birthday's coming up, and I'd really like a domain, please.
Yeah, I'm like, just give me .com. I started the website because I didn't want to just be an influencer. Like, that's never been something, like, for me, if I really had it my way, I would not be on social media at all, even though I have a knack for it. And I always knew that I wanted it to be more than just an Instagram account. And so I started dimepiece.co. And it's basically just interviewing women about their watches. And it's not just hardcore collectors or, I interviewed my friend Isabella. She's a specialist at Philips, and she's amazing and has this encyclopedia like knowledge of watches, but it's also women who only have one watch. And I'm like, let's cover the spectrum here and show people and educate people that you don't have to, be really intense about it. You can kind of approach it casually. And Yeah, so interviews, and also at that point I had started writing about watches. My friend Nikki Oganake, at the time she was the digital director of Harper's Bazaar. She saw what I was doing on the Instagram account, and she was like, can you be our watch columnist for Harper's Bazaar? And I was like, whoa, like I really need to learn about watches now. And so I was...
Somehow it becomes more real when it's in print.
Yeah, and full articles. I was like, okay, so I'm watching YouTube videos, self-educating. What's the difference between a quartz and a mechanical movement? Just reading Hodinkee and trying to educate myself, and then writing it. But I didn't feel such imposter syndrome because I knew who I was writing for were people like me who just wanted to learn more and weren't ready for like the layers of it yet, and just never heard of a Patek Philippe Nautilus. So yeah, it was writing, it was my website, and then I started doing influencer stuff because I knew that once I kind of got into Dimepiece that I just really wanted to focus on watches. And I've always been the kind of jack of all trades. Like in high school, I was like in every single club. I played every sport. And this was the first time that I was really able to hone in one thing and understand the power of just focusing on that and seeing the success of that. I don't know. Were you like that when you were younger? Like, you wrote your dissertation on watches, so you seem pretty focused.
Yeah, my indoctrination to it was different because this was the opposite of you, which is this is entirely the world that I grew up in. And like the earliest memories that I have of sitting at the dining room table were like my dad talking about something called a Submariner. And I had no idea what that was. Other than it's like when you're listening to things that your parents are talking about, certain things are said in a tone where you go, oh, this is something very reverent. We need to pay attention to this. Exactly. Well, and I do think that reverence is such an interesting topic when it comes to watches. And I think that you amplified a trend that our friend Ben Clymer started in, and like starting to approach these things in what felt like a more human, maybe it's more millennial, maybe it's more, I don't know, whatever it is that we are. But it took it out of the pantheon of this comes out of the library and these are just sort of unapproachably fancy things.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. And Ben and Hodinkee, I feel like just brought it to this, like, it was the foundation for now what we see. There's so much watch media and it's very non-traditional because how nerdy were you? Were you like on forums and stuff? Were you in the watch forums?
Yeah, I was. I don't even try to think of what it was. It must have been Time Zone, you know, that like when they were introducing new watches in Basel, there were like rumors that started weeks before. Yeah. And they were posting to, I don't know if were they bulletin boards or news groups or whatever they were.
Yeah. Like there was no centralized kind of source, like the paper of record.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And you either had press releases, which were shiny. Yeah. All right, here is the catalog that came from the brand. Yeah. Or you had some lackey that was offering some glossy take on it, but there was no perspective. Yeah. Right? Nobody was telling you, this is good, this is interesting, this is an opinion on it. And I think that's actually one of the things that increase people's interest. Yeah, perspective. Why are you excited about this? All right, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah, and just offering people perspective, I think, is really valuable in a category that people might not know about if they didn't grow up with their parents talking about submariners at the dinner table. I think that's kind of a... Yeah.
It's a little bit of an edge case.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I'm just picturing you as a kid.
Well, I'll show you at some point me getting sent off in an oversized suit to go stand behind the counter as shortly after my bar mitzvah. Here you go. My mother was sick of me, so go take him to the store. Go make him do something worthwhile. But in this process, so you're building up an audience, and the audience looks probably a lot like you, or at least has a worldview that is aligned with yours when you're saying, all right, I understand the audience. Yeah. But the other side, the supply side, at least from a manufacturing standpoint, up until very recently looks nothing like you. Yeah. And so what are you encountering when all of a sudden there is this young American woman who is creating interest in this category, and you encounter a bunch of Swiss suits.
Yeah. So when you say the supply side, are you talking about like what's on the market?
I'm thinking about manufacturers as you're dealing with brands.
Yeah.
When do you go to Switzerland for the first time?
Yeah. Okay. My first Swiss trip. I think this was in 2022. It must have been, and that was when Watches and Wonders came about. Because before it was Baselworld or SIHH. That's all so before my time. But post-pandemic, the big watch fairs merged and they were branded as Watches and Wonders. And this is the biggest annual watch trade show in the world. And at that point, I had been writing about watches for Harper's Bazaar. I had written something for Vogue. I was getting my name out there, building a following, which that's also thanks to a lot of the press that I got, like Cara Barrett of Hodinkee formerly too. Like as soon as she posted Dimepiece on Hodinkee, that's when I got really a lot of serious watch people. So somehow my name got on the list for Watches and Wonders, and I flew myself out and I was in the hotel that they gave me, and
the show says, "Dear Miss Wallner, we'd like to see you. Please arrive in Geneva."
Yeah. And I was like, what is this? I don't really know what this is. And I was like, should I go? I was debating whether or not to go, not realizing how important it is. And then
you got an invitation to the Olympics.
Yeah. And once I got on the grounds, which it's at this huge expo center, like 1 million times the size of the Javits Center, and the security is tight, and I have a badge with my picture on it and my name, and it's Brynn Wallner, founder of Dimepiece, and I was like, oh, this is real. And, you know, you scan in, and it's facial recognition, you feel like you're in the future, and it's just, you're in this place where there are all these structures that all the watch brands call them booths, which is like...
stands.
Yeah. I'm thinking it's going to be like 47th Street
guys
or something.
Guys at a card table.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's like the Rolex booth is actually a multi-floor build out just for this week, and it has plants in it, and it's got interior design and stairs, and there are all these different rooms, and it's all these watch brands have their structures, and you go into each structure after making appointments, and you see all the new novelties. So it's all their new watches for the year.
And it took me years to realize that novelties mean things that are new.
Yeah.
These are the things that we're introducing. Yeah. I think that took me a decade to figure that out.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of terminology. And when you actually see the watches, when you see the novelties, the appointment is called the touch and feel, which I think they've changed it to touch and try. But yeah, there's all the lingo.
That meant English-speaking HR attorneys who said, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Now I have a sweet spot for touch and feel. But yeah, it all became very real very quickly, and I realized just how big this industry is and how much work goes into everything, because you can read an article about a watch and you can have your gut opinion on it, and you're like, oh, I like it. It's cute. It's not cute. But then you hear the watchmakers explain it, and you see all of the time that went into creating this new novelty, and you're like, oh my God, there's so much going on at work right now. There's marketing, there's product development, there's heritage, there's archival stuff that you're pulling inspiration from, and it's just like, the more you learn, the more you realize how big the world is.
And was it at that show that you had that kind of awakening, or was that happening along the way?
It was happening along the way, but it really got cemented into my brain when I first went to Geneva. And even it was the night before I went to Watches and Wonders, walking around the lake and seeing all the logos on the buildings. The Rolex logo just reflecting on Lake Geneva, and Patek Philippe and Richard Mille and Vacheron Constantin. I was like, this whole city is built around watchmaking, and I felt giddy. I was like, I'm in Disney World right now, and just understanding the scale of it all. And most of these brands have been around since like the 1800s, Vacheron since the 1700s. So you really feel the weight and the history of it. And while I'm disrupting and to your question, which I don't even know if I've answered. I'm like this young American woman. I've got this fresh perspective, but going to Switzerland.
You're the one from the internet, right?
Yeah. I'm like, oh, this is so much bigger than I could have imagined. And I do have a reverence for it. And it's like striking the balance between respect but also jutting in with my style and my humor and things that are really true to me, which I feel have really resonated with people. It's like a fine line, and it's all a dance, but it's been really exciting.
And at some point along the line, you start curating pieces and selling vintage pieces.
Yeah, I had so many women specifically in my DMs being like, I love that watch that you posted that Bella's wearing. I want to buy it, but I don't necessarily have the money. And blah, blah, blah. It's so hard to find some things on the secondary market. Should I go on the real? And just all these people asking me where to buy a watch. And in the meantime, I'm developing relationships with people in the industry, among them some dealers. And when I met Alan Bedwell, who is a professional dealer, he's also known as Foundwell. He's been professionally dealing watches for 20 years. He moved to the States from London to work on Ralph Lauren's watch program. I met him, and he had a little pouch of ladies' watches that he showed me, and this was probably in late 2020 or early 2021. And he's like, look, I'm a watch dealer and I sell like the usual suspects like vintage Rolexes and, you know, all these things that guys want. He's like, but I have all these ladies' watches that nobody really cares about. And he opened the pouch, and inside was the Cartier Benoir, a watch that I'd never seen before or heard about, because we weren't writing about the Cartier Benoir at Sotheby's. This was kind of a more low-key watch. It's a ladies' watch. And I was like, that's so cool. Like, I know a million people who would want to wear this.
This is a gold bracelet watch that is oval-shaped, right? Is it on a bracelet, or it's sometimes on a strap?
So it's not on a bracelet.
Okay.
It started on a strap, and it was really relatively undervalued. And I didn't know many people who wore it. Flynn McGarry, who's a chef, he's Gem downtown. I saw that he wears it, and I was like, that's so cool that you're wearing that watch, because it is kind of a dainty watch, and to see a guy wear it, I mean, that's a whole other conversation. But this watch was like really low key, and I was like, we should work together. And he was like, we absolutely should. And I was like, I don't want to be a dealer. I just want to kind of be a medium for what you're selling, because I have all these people anyway. So we kind of very organically were like, well, let's list some watches on your website and see who bites. And people did, and we've been kind of slacking. I haven't posted a lot of products recently. But I do some private sourcing and sold some watches to Charlie XCX.
Ooh.
And, you know, other people, friends and family.
Talked to a customer of yours this morning, Jenna Perry of hair fame, was rocking a beautiful 18-karat gold date just that she said you helped her find.
Yes. And I love that process of helping people, because she hit me up, because Jenna Perry, hairstylist, amazing colorist to the stars. A friend I went to high school with connected me with Jenna, because Jenna was like, I want to watch, but I have no idea what I want. She's like, I know I like gold. And I was like, okay, hold on. You're giving Rolex. Like, you're just powerful.
You're giving gold Rolex.
You're cool.
It's even stronger.
Yeah. And I there's this photo that Slim Aarons took in the 60s of Britt Eklund. I think she was a Bond girl. And she's just sitting there in like the south of France, and she's got her gold Rolex on. And I sent that to her, and I was like, this is the vibe I want for you. And she's like, oh my God. So it's kind of like when people are coming to you not knowing what they want, it's really fun, because it's almost like an astrological reading or something.
You're a matchmaker.
Yeah, like you. So I'm kind of just like checking the vibe. I'm like, okay, what's her style? What is she into? Like, what's her like energy? And to be able to successfully match people up with a watch feels really gratifying. And yeah, so that happened. And the Cartier Benoir, which we were talking about, I started selling that more and posting more about it, and then more people were talking about it. And then fast forward a couple years, Cartier officially re-releases it, because it wasn't in the catalog, or maybe they had one kind of more obscure one. Cartier re-releases the Cartier Benoir.
For the first time in how long?
Well, it's a watch from the 60s originally. I forget when they stopped selling it. Like, I think it's been more than 10 years. They re-released it really ingeniously on a bangle. That's the one that you have.
That's what I'm thinking of, yeah.
And this is a watch that
I'm not cool enough to have that one.
I know. Well, maybe your wife.
Yeah.
That to me was really cool. They were so smart to make it on a bangle because it made it a watch, but also jewelry. And in the Watches and Wonders appointment, while they were revealing their novelties.
Well, you were touching and feeling.
I was touching and feeling it. And they were like, this watch is meant to be stacked. And to hear that, I was like, that's crazy because...
This was something that you had talked about.
Yeah.
Right? You had written about...
Yeah.
Was that sort of oppositional to people saying, don't do this?
Yeah, because, and that's another thing, like the way watches are worn is not intentionally, but I think a little discriminatory to women in particular, because we do like to stack and we're wearing bracelets and we have other things. And I noticed, and the reason why I even wrote that article is because whenever I would post anyone wearing a watch with a stack, or if I stacked my watch, I would have watch guys coming at me being like, you can't stack it.
Why?
And it's ruining the mood. It's going to scratch it. It messes with the integrity of the watch. And like maybe it ruins the movement, which there are little kernels of truth there. But I'm like, but it's my watch and so what if it gets scratched, and within reason. And to have Cartier in their official meeting in Switzerland say that this was a watch designed to be stacked, that was a huge turning point for me, because I was like, okay, now Cartier's always been designing for women and they're so good at it. And the jewelry houses do have a leg up.
Cartier's just about the only one though, aren't they? Who
Well,
else?
no, Bulgari and Van Cleef, but Cartier is really... They've always been so closely knit with pop culture, and it's just like the most stylish people you know from back in the day up until now. Like a lot of them are wearing Cartier, and that's no accident. And to see this watch being released, I was like, this is happening, and we're looking at women wearing watches in a very serious way, and people are creating product for that. This like emerging demographic.
Yeah. And then you get this I'm actually going to start working with some brands to actually make watches or to resurrect watches. And you just had a recent debut of something. Tell us the story of how that came about.
Yeah. So I just released a watch with Timex.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it's in collaboration also with Alan Bedwell of Foundwell, the guy that I sell watches with. And it all started when my watch collection was developing. After the Cartier, Alan, aka Foundwell, he gave me a vintage Hoyer diver watch. And this was from the 80s, and it's like 28 millimeters, and it's small. So by default, maybe it's a lady's watch. But there was no mother of pearl, no diamonds, no pink. It was just a really sporty watch.
Then how did you know it was for women?
I know.
It's like buying a pen. If it's not pink, you don't know which bic to pick.
Yeah, exactly. I had this watch and I was like, oh my God, why don't watch brands make little divers now? Like so many women would buy this. Like no frills, just really sporty. Like I loved wearing it to the beach, hiking. Like it was just like sporty spice. It was awesome. And I became really obsessed with vintage baby divers. And I'm like, again, like why aren't the watch brands making these watches now? And then separately, in my celebrity watch spotting vertical, I was just on Getty Images one day, like procrastinating, not writing an article. And I was like, John F. Kennedy Jr. And I was like, let's see what watches he was wearing, because he's the pinnacle of style.
Speaking of 1990s teen Vogue icons.
Totally. I found this photo of John, and he's wearing what looks to be like a kind of like sporty, plasticky watch with his suit. And I sent it to Alan, and I was like, what's he wearing? And he was like, that's a Timex. He's like, don't post that photo. And I was like, okay. He's like, let's try to get in touch with Timex and see if they want to re-release it.
Can we corner the market before we promote this?
Yeah, because we'd learned with the Cartier Benoir. No.
Did you get a Benoir before it was re-released? Oh,
no.
I'm sorry. I mean,
it's okay. I don't
there.
really buy watches.
Yeah.
I just appreciate them like one would art.
It's like being a Picasso critic. You're not collecting Picassos.
Totally. Yeah, I don't have a crazy collection. Yeah, so we got in touch with Timex through the Todd Snyder team, which Alan sells vintage watches with Todd Snyder, and I'm also good friends with a lot of the people who work there. And they had done Timex collaborations, so they were like, you guys have to meet. I met the Timex team. We had a Zoom. Their design team is based in Milano, and they were...
Timex is historically an American company, isn't it?
So it's an American brand, but the design team that works specifically on the collaborations is in Milan. And
they have to be the cool people, so
they're
have to
really
be in
cool.
Milan.
Yeah, it's run by Giorgio Galli, who's like an icon in the design space. And shout out Roman, shout out Andrea. I had that first Zoom call with them, and I was like, this is the start of a relationship, because it was such good energy. And we also found out we were all Tauruses. Anyway, they were totally...
When's your birthday?
May 12th.
And mine is May 2nd.
Oh, fellow.
There
No wonder
you
your podcast is about materialism. Yeah, they were totally game. They were like, okay, yeah, let's re-release the John F. Kennedy Jr. watch. And it's a watch from 1995. It's called the Intrepid, and it's got a tachymeter scale. So you can picture him going from the Tribeca meeting and then hopping on whatever to get to Martha's Vineyard, and he could go straight to the sailboat with this watch. And I was like, love that you guys are reissuing this. And we were, involved in that process. But then Alan and I were like, but it's so big. It's 46 millimeters. And I want something that's more true to what I actually wear. Enter the baby diver. Can we re-release this watch, but smaller? And maybe with some little extra spice that makes it more dime piece. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. And so we took that watch, we sized it down a whole 10 millimeters, 36 millimeters. We made the dial...
Which is what qualifies as a small watch today.
Yeah, these days. We made the dial color like kind of a creamy vintagey white, and added some purple for the dime piece color. And all in all, it took about 2 years. And it was released like a month ago, and it sold out over the weekend.
Congratulations.
And now it's being flipped on the secondary market.
I saw you posting that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
This is a $239 watch that somebody
selling
bought.
for $750 or something?
$900 is the highest. So I'm basically the 5711.
I think 3X is pretty good in a week. I hope you have a case of those stacked away for retirement somewhere.
I don't have that many, and I have anxiety around.
So you talked a little bit earlier when we were talking about Jenna about kind of vibe matching people to watches. Someone comes to you for the first time and they're like, okay, I'd be curious to know also, what are the occasions when someone says that, right? You were talking about round number birthdays or professional achievements. Walk us through, one of those things.
Yeah. I think in the case of Jenna, it's like she had her salon, but then she opened up this great space on West Broadway. And I went in to visit her, and I was like, oh my God, like, you are killing it. And I think for her, it was like, I just want something nice, and also something that I can keep forever and pass down to my kids if I have them, and it turns into an heirloom. And like, I think the way that we're shopping these days is with that kind of mindset, the longevity of it. If we're fatigued by fast fashion, what's like the counterpoint? So yeah, it's success. It's the birthdays, push presents. I'm getting a lot of that. Wedding presents, just anything to mark an occasion, which I find to be really beautiful.
And are people buying for themselves, or are people asking, I want to give a gift and can you help me?
Yeah, it's mostly women buying for themselves, and the rise of self-purchasing women is high. Like it's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As well it should.
Yeah.
And so you sort of talked about in specific terms, but in aggregate, is watch design for women becoming better? Not to put too fine a point on it, but basically your point earlier, which I agree with, was women's watches were smaller versions of men's watches that were festooned with diamonds and cutesy colors.
Yes.
And that was the case in large part up until very recently.
Yeah, and it's still happening. Like, I'm seeing watch releases and I'm like, you guys...
Did you just have a filter that you applied to the other watch?
It's not, you don't have to overthink it. But I think the Cartier Benoit example, because when that watch was released on the bangle, it got like the Daytona treatment. Like, people wanted to buy it at Cartier and they couldn't. And there's a wait list. And I think that was one of the first times in recent memory that a ladies specific, or at least gender labels, are very taboo in the watch industry. But to me, that watch was designed for a woman. And if you want to wear it as a man, go for it. it's like, it doesn't matter, but I think where I trip up on the gender labels is like, I want a design that's intentionally for women. I want watchmakers and designers sitting around a table being like, what would a modern woman want to wear?
Ideally, there might be some women who are part of that design team who are, pontificating on that topic.
Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that intention. And then once the product's out in the world, you're free to wear it however you like. Anybody can wear it, but it's about the intention. And so this watch, the Cartier Benoit on a bangle, which felt very intentionally for a modern woman, to see it performing so well, to see the waitlist happening, to see it explode on the secondary market, and everybody wants this watch. I think the other watch brands were taking note, being like, oh, this is what happens when we redirect. And so, yeah, we've been seeing more, like Omega released their Aquaterra in a smaller size with a mechanical movement. And that was a movement that took 2 years to develop. And they were like, let's create a mechanical watch for women, and let's do it with a lot of intention. Hermes did the same thing. They created the Cut. This is a sports watch for women with a mechanical movement. So there's a lot more thought that's going into it.
Omega did one a couple years ago, and they named it the Lady Matic, which seemed like the world's worst name for a product.
Yeah, I feel like the branding and the advertising too, like, I want to see more growth in that as well. But it's, to me, I see these releases and I'm like, baby steps. And it's not baby steps for the brand. It's like R&D and multiple teams and watchmakers. And to make a mechanical watch in a mechanical movement in a smaller watch, that is really hard to do because you're shrinking the size of everything. So I see it and I'm really happy. And there are some missteps, but I'm just like, we're on the right path.
You talked about your Cartier, and you talked about how, you don't collect too many other things, but are there other watches that you have that are meaningful in some way?
Yeah. So when I started Dimepiece and I got my Cartier, my dad was like, hey, I have a Rolex. And I'm like, you do? Where has this been all my life? And he wore it when I was little, but not enough to remember. And then he graduated to like Garmin's, like digital watches for sport.
You might need to communicate with a satellite. You never know.
You never know. And he was like, yeah, I have a Rolex Datejust. And my mom got it for me when I graduated law school in the 80s. And I was like, that's sick. And he's like, I want to give it to you. And that was also huge for me because I have a brother. And I feel like had I not started Dimepiece, the watch absolutely would have gone from my dad to my brother. By default. Yeah. Because you give the watch from father to son. Like, it feels so natural.
It's like the land and the manor estate. Someone's got to take care of the...
Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, I'll get mom's jewelry and my brother will get dad's watch. And that just felt like the natural order of things. But when I started Dimepiece and my dad was like, what is going on? Like, what? The watch is like, what? And he saw my success and he was like, I really want to give you this watch. And he gave it to me. And it's from 1986 and it's engraved with his initials and it's a blue dial with applied gold Roman numerals. And it's two-tone and it's awesome. And I'm just like, I hardly even wear it because I'm so terrified that I'll lose it or something. But now I have the heirloom.
I used to say that I wasn't a terribly woo-woo person. And I feel like the older I've gotten, the more so I have become.
Me too.
And I'm just thinking about that in terms of watches. I have a similar watch that my dad gave me. And I remember him. This was the watch that he wore my entire time growing up. It's a 1978 14 karat gold Rolex date.
Wow.
With
14
no
karat.
14 karat, which they made only for the American market.
Really?
Yes. There was a weird, like some other weird period in tariff where it was onerously expensive from a tariff perspective to bring in 18 karat watches.
Wow. Okay.
So Rolex made a 14 karat gold watch only for the American market.
Wow.
And I remember this was the watch that my dad wore for years, up until at some point he got a white gold day date with a lapis diamond dial, which he then...
Hot.
Oh, it's amazing. He gave me the 14 karat date. I have not gotten the day date yet. If you're listening, dear father, that would be a nice gift at some point. But there is something about putting that on and you get, oh, I know where this has been.
Yeah.
And this is now almost 50 years old, and it was a gift from my grandparents to my father for his 21st birthday.
Yeah.
And there just is something in the material. And so when we're talking about the materialism of it, okay, it's gold.
Yeah.
And there's value to gold.
Yeah.
And okay, it's a Rolex, and there's value to that as a brand name. The fact that it is my father's Rolex that was a gift from his parents that he wore as he was building his jewelry business is really meaningful to me.
Yeah.
And there's nothing else from that era that is left in our family. He doesn't have his car from 1978. Nobody lives in the same house.
His shoes.
No, exactly. Like, fortunately, I think he got rid of his suits from the late 70s. And if you look at it, okay, the bracelet is a little bit stretched out, but it looks not dissimilar from a contemporary Rolex.
Yeah, that's so great. And we're so lucky to have inherited these pieces. And I think a lot of people who aren't as lucky as us are going into it with the mindset that they're building the heirloom and the generational wealth or whatever you're aspiring to. And the watch is just, it's got that. So, yeah, it's very powerful.
We could talk for hours more, and I imagine probably will. But as we bring this home, I'm curious about other objects in your life of value. Are there other material things that you prize, things that have been foundational in your kind of development as a materialist?
Yeah, I have it right here. This was my grandmother's Louis Vuitton Speedy, and my grandparents were awesome, ballers, great style. And my grandmother had this purse, and I just got it restored at Louis Vuitton.
I say it looks beautiful. It looks like it could be brand new.
All the hardware was like crumbling, and this was hanging by a thread. And I was like, you know what? I need to shape it up. So I went into Louis V, and I had them restore it. And I'm like, I'm keeping this forever. Yeah, things that just come to me from family, which, again, I'm really lucky to get nice things from family. Those are the things that, like, I'm keeping, and I'm actively taking care of them because I want my kids to have it, my imaginary kids.
We talked about terms earlier that get thrown around. Is there an overrated watch term, something that people use that they think is meaningful, that is nonsense?
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. I have two. One is a birth year watch, which I'm only annoyed about as somebody who sells watches. I'm like, ugh.
Don't make me find.
Yeah.
How much harder do you want this to be?
1988 Rolex. Oh God. I don't know. But it is a cute idea. And you're talking about like woo woo, and like it does feel nice. And when it works out, it works out. But then also box and papers. And this is also coming from the perspective of someone involved with selling watches. But I feel like we've placed so much emphasis on a watch's value if it has their box and papers.
What does that mean?
So if you're buying a vintage watch or a pre-owned watch and it comes with its box and papers, that means it's the original box and it's original paperwork from the retailer.
And what does that tell me? Why do I care?
That tells you that this watch is authentic and it was owned ideally by a single owner. It's only been owned once before. And also it helps increase the resale value. So if you buy the watch and you have the box and papers and you want to sell it, you have all its collateral. So by default, it's just going to get a bigger value on the secondary market. But
and you're calling hooey on this?
Yeah. Well, no. So I think it's obviously great to have, but the way that people were buying watches back even as like the 90s or even like Y2K, like it wasn't what it is now, like where you're going in it as a consumer, you're very aware of box and papers and you're more educated. Like people were buying watches to wear them, so they weren't necessarily keeping the Rolex box and they weren't keeping their receipt or their paperwork, or like after the 1 year warranty ends, you're moving, you're throwing it away.
Anymore? Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like if you're talking specifically vintage, it's like, yeah, it's really nice to have box and papers, but you don't need it. And people they didn't have that mindset back then. So you just got to work with a trusty dealer and put less emphasis on like value quality over all the little extra accoutrements.
The check marks that you think connote quality and just connote cardboard boxes. Yeah. Is there one brand that's getting it right now? Who's killing it?
Cartier's doing great, but also Rolex. And a lot of people are like, Rolex, everybody has a Rolex and everybody knows Rolex. I'm like, that's for a reason.
Because they make the best watch.
Yeah, and they're the crown, and I just feel like there's a lot of innovation there. But I don't know, I think coming from Geneva Watch Days, the independent watch fair, there's a lot of innovation right now, and we're in this exciting time where watchmakers are pushing the limits. And I think all the watch brands are having this moment where it's like we're past like the boom of the pandemic and people are stressed out about tariffs, and watch brands are really looking at like the intrinsic value of their watch and why people would spend all this money on something. So I think we're seeing a lot of exciting things happen. Yeah, it's an exciting time.
Is there an archival release that hasn't been done that you would dream of appearing?
Yeah, but I'm gatekeeping because I want to do more collabs.
We know that there's a folder of pictures that you're waiting to release.
Oh my God, I have so many. I'm like, I want to work with Seiko and Tag Heuer. I want to work with Tudor, Breitling, like all these brands that let's make some cool watches for women.
And without naming names, has there been receptivity from brands beyond the Timex?
I haven't done the outreach yet. I'm kind of... Alan's like, hello, you got to start like sending out the emails. And I'm like, I'm shy.
Did you see that my thing sold out in, 12 days?
Yeah. So I gotta get on the horse and start pitching. But yeah.
Yeah. Coming soon or at some point.
Hopefully.
Is there something that you love that would surprise or appall the purists?
Really good question. I do like an iced out. I feel like I've grown more to like diamonds. Not in the women's watch way where it's like a little tiny pink diamond, but like a guy's watch, like what you were saying, your dad's watch with the lapis. And is there a diamond involved?
It's I don't know, it's probably not a 12 diamond dial, but it has diamond hour hands. Yeah,
like I kind of do love that bling, but it has to be on the right watch. And the purists wouldn't disagree, but bling is its own category.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about that. My father doesn't have any watches with diamond bezels. My grandfather does.
Oh, cool.
My grandfather has this super cool, I think it's one of a kind.
Wow.
It is a Rolex Cellini.
Ooh, cool.
And I don't know if it exactly is a Midas, but it is something from that era.
Yeah.
With a diamond bezel and a lapis dial.
Sick.
And it's this like super thin.
Yeah.
But my grandfather was very flamboyant. He had a diamond dial carbon fiber Roger Dubuis.
Oh my God.
With like 2 straps on it.
Oh
and
my God. He had a Roger Dubuis.
Uh-huh.
Your grandma's cool.
Oh, so cool. And just had like a very strong aesthetic.
Yeah. I love that.
He also had a baby blue Mercedes SL with a tan painted roof.
Whoa. Our grandparents are cool.
So cool. Way cooler than I will ever be. I can only hope of being that cool.
Yeah.
Are there, in the watch world or in any other thing in the material space, artists, people, brands you think that need more love that people should know about?
Yeah. I'm wearing a Carolina Bucci bracelet, and I learned about Carolina Bucci, who's a Florentine jeweler, and she's, I don't know, 3rd, 4th generation jeweler from Florence. She's amazing. And I had never heard of her until I started working in the watch industry, and she did a collaboration with Audemars Piguet. And I mean, she doesn't need more press. Like, I'm not doing her any favors, I don't think, but if you haven't heard of her, she's got really cool sensibility. And this bracelet, which I don't know if you can even see it, this is called the Lucky Bracelet, and it's 18 karat gold interwoven with silk. And it's so casual. And it's just like, she's so tan and tall and tan and young and lovely. And she's just like, I don't know, I love her jewelry. So if you've never heard of her...
She's a very good one.
Yeah, she's like, I'm trying to think of more low-key ones.
That's okay. High-key ones are fine.
Yeah, I really don't know that much about jewelry, so I need to get more in the at-present world.
There you go. I know a guy.
Okay.
Perfect. If people want to explore more of the Dimepiece universe, where should they start?
At dimepiece.co on Instagram or dimepiece.co online, or send me an email. I love email. I'm a big email girl. So, yeah, I'm here to talk watches.
Available for watch vibe checking.
Yeah.
at your beck and call.
Yeah.
Brynn Wallner, such a joy. Thank you.
Thank you. Good times.
That's it for this episode of The Materialist. If you like what you heard, please like, rate, and subscribe to The Materialist wherever you get your podcasts. The Materialist is a presentation of At Present, Matchmaker to Extraordinary Jewelry. We'll see you next time.